Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, what up, brothers? It's the Director. Chargers fans, you guys ready for another hard-fought game coming up on Sunday versus the Cleveland Browns? Now, the Chargers at this point of the season, 3-1 on top of the AFC West, as well as on top of the entire AFC Conference. They're about to face one of their biggest games of the year. The Cleveland Browns, of course. This Browns team does not look like the Browns team of the past. Definitely one of the more lethal defenses in the league, and I would say the best rushing attack in the league by far. Now, one big thing people have been asking me a lot about is, Director, are the Browns a great team, or have they not faced some of the best teams outside of Kansas City this year? They beat Houston, Chicago, and Minnesota, but lost to Kansas City. I think a large part due to Patrick Mahomes, which Justin Herbert is not too far away of in terms of talent and winnability of any given game. The Browns possess possibly the Chargers' biggest kryptonite, however, an overpowered run offense. Chargers fans have been worried about the Browns and their running attack for a long time now because their rushing defense hasn't been one of the best in the league. Last week versus the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chargers were able to figure it out, but this is going to be a whole nother beast. So can the Chargers hold on and remain the top team in the AFC West, perhaps even the AFC in this game? We'll have to wait and find out. Now, question for you guys before we do officially get started. What will it take for the Chargers to beat the Cleveland Browns here in Week 5? Is it going to be the Chargers' passing attack or their ability to maybe figure things out versus the run, or maybe something else that we did not mention here? Let us know in the comments section below. Now, before we do get started, guys, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, the small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera, action. The Chargers versus Browns Week 5 game preview. It's going to be a big one this week, man. A huge test to the Chargers and their offense and defense, I have to say. A lot to cover in this video. Let's make, again, this bigger for the people in the back. The Chargers injury report. We like to start every video with an injury report to kind of get a gauge of who's going to be playing in this game. Let's start off here with the Chargers. Of course, the Browns do have their fair share of them to go over this week as well. Starting with Keenan Allen getting full practices as well as Austin Eckler. I think these are going to be two very big players for the Chargers to lean on this week. More to come in just a minute. Chris Harris Jr. for the first time in a while has been recovering from his shoulder injury, getting a full practice in on Thursday. Unfortunately, we do not have the full injury report for Friday at the time of recording this video, but Chris Harris, his return could mean big things for this Chargers defense. I think people often forget how good Chris Harris can be, just because, yes, he has been on the wrong side of the injury report for a while now, but this guy can be a difference maker and does play all over the field, a lot like Derwin James. So seeing his return is really good, in particular for this matchup this week. Justin Jackson, groin injury, did not practice on Thursday. That does spell some maybe changes in what the Chargers bring out in the game on Sunday. We've seen a lot of Justin Jackson, maybe not enough of Joshua Kelly. I think some people really want to see what he's got in the tank. Maybe he does have a resurgence from his last season. We might be able to see a little bit of him this week. Honestly, between the two, I'm hoping to see more touches for a Larry Roundtree that has been seeing more touches since last week. And honestly, he's been looking really, really good, the rookie for the 2021 class. The Chargers definitely have themselves a nice stack of rookies this season. Outside of that, we got a full practice in for Derwin James and Drew Tranquil. I think those guys will be just fine, but keep an eye on the injury report as we get closer to Sunday, as always, because if any one of these guys does sit out, it does change what the Chargers will likely do versus the Browns in this upcoming game. Now, next up, we kind of flew through the Chargers because the Browns have a lot of injuries to go over. Like, honestly, a truly stacked list name of injuries that we got to go over for the Browns. And honestly, this could be a huge shift in what the Chargers have to do on Sunday, depending on who sits out and who does play. Odell Beckham Jr. has been battling injury for the most part this season, a shoulder injury. He has been getting in full practices all week, though, so I do expect him to play. Now, Jadeveon Clowney a big part of this Browns defense, a huge signing for them this offseason, has been dealing with an elbow injury. He did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday, but did get a limited practice in on Friday. Last I heard, maybe it wasn't as bad, so I do think he's going to play, which of course is something the Chargers definitely need to keep an eye on as far as that pass rush and even run-stopping ability of Jadeveon Clowney. I think he's highly underrated, somebody that I was hoping the Chargers would go after this offseason as well, and I think he just really does fit what the Cleveland Browns are trying to do this season. Instead of that, Jack Conklin been getting limited practices in. I do think that he plays. Tony Fields, shoulder, again, I do think he plays. The bigger ones coming down here. Myles Garrett, not injury related. He's getting rest for his knee and ankle. He's not been practicing. Did get one limited practice in on Thursday. Again, I do think that he suits up, and he's going to be one of the biggest points of emphasis for the Chargers in regarding to slowing down their defense. Their defense is really good. Other notable names here, Troy Hill, limited practice, questionable. If he sits out, that's a big one for the Chargers. More on that in just a second. Malik Jackson, defensive tackle, not injury related, so I do expect him to play. He's going to be a big part of their run D. Takaris McKinley, limited practice. Greg Newsome, I think a new acquisition, right? He will be out this game. David Njoku, Malcolm Smith, J.C. Treader, all these guys listed questionable. Of course, all of them pretty big for this Browns team. And then Denzel Ward and Jedrick Wills, both questionable as well. Jedrick Wills, I do remember him going down. I'm not sure which game it was, but a big loss for the Browns if he does not suit up on Sunday. And of course, Denzel Ward, we don't know what's going on with him. Neck injuries, I feel, are honestly taken one of the most serious as far as injuries in the NFL, so there is a chance that he sits for this game. Of course, last night we saw a neck injury for Chris Carson with the Seahawks, and it was kind of questionable whether or not he would play. I was pretty confident that we're probably going to rest him because, again, neck injuries are nothing to take lightly. And with Denzel Ward gone, that could be a pretty big thing for the Chargers, but again, we don't really know. More on that closer to game day. So a long list of Cleveland Browns potential sits or sitting outs or whatever, game statuses, I should say, and any one of them could certainly swing things one way or the other in this game script. Wow, that's probably one of the longest injury reports we've had to go over on this channel. A lot for the Browns. Of course, we don't wish injury on any player in the NFL, but of course, we have to acknowledge that their absence would definitely swing things one way or another. Now, let's get into the keys to victory for this Chargers game here in Week 5. We're going to start with the elephant in the room. I know a lot of Chargers fans are very nervous about this matchup because of these two guys right here, in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. These guys are averaging 177 yards per game with the Browns on the ground, with Nick Chubb being one of my favorite running backs in the league because, honestly, he runs with so much power and, honestly, underrated speed as well. And, of course, Chargers fans absolutely know the struggles that we've been having versus the run this season. A team like the Cleveland Browns kind of feel like the perfect kryptonite for the Bolts when it comes to slowing down an offense. And, of course, Brandon Staley probably knows this as well. Slowing down these two guys is going to be one of the biggest tests for this team this season because they are both dynamic. Now, a little sliver of hope here for the Chargers fans out there watching. The Chargers did show signs of slowing down Josh Jacobs last week. Of course, he was banged up, and this is a whole nother beast because this team never slows down on the ground. Kareem Hunt, the running back, too, I'd say 1A, 1B running backs on this team, is also very good and does have upside in the receiving game as well. He's very lethal in combination with Nick Chubb on this team. A 1-2 punch that carries consistent momentum for their offense. Really, the heart and soul of this offense runs through Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So this is going to be one of the biggest tests for the Chargers defense this year, of course, because their biggest weakness is run defense, and these guys certainly could exploit that. But I think Brandon Staley might have a plan in slowing these guys down. We'll go over that here in just a moment as well. Another key to victory for the Chargers is burying Baker Mayfield. And honestly, Baker Mayfield, we didn't mention this in the injury report because I don't know if it was listed, but he has been playing with a partially torn labrum, I think, since week 2 versus the Houston Texans. And I don't know if that's been affecting him in every game now, but he has been struggling in recent weeks. He's only thrown 2 touchdowns this season and under 940 yards in 4 games, which honestly is not the greatest stats you want to see for a quarterback in the NFL. He averages around 233 yards a game, and some of that was inflated with his high-powered, air game in Week 1 versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Outside of that, he definitely has been struggling. And not to mention, he was struggling a lot last week versus the Vikings' stout pass rushing attack. I think Joey Bosa and company should offer the same sort of threat to Baker Mayfield this year, and it is something that I think the Chargers need to focus on this week, same as they focused on last week versus Derek Carr. You start getting in Baker Mayfield's head, a lot like many other quarterbacks in the NFL, he starts to get rattled and making bad decisions. And I think if the Chargers can force Baker Mayfield into a position where he needs to be throwing the ball more, that could likely be the key to victory for the Chargers this week. He's still a threat. We can't, undermine what he is in the NFL. He certainly could turn it on and be very lethal in the air game this week, but the Chargers should be playing closer to the line of scrimmage this week, keeping plays in front of them. That's a big key to winning this week, and if they're able to do that, get pressure on Baker Mayfield and force him to pass more than not, I think the Chargers can definitely handle the passing attack of the Cleveland Browns, who definitely more features their running attack in a week-to-week basis. Okay? Big thing we need to talk about, too, in this game. One thing that, again, worries me as a Chargers fan in this game is the elite Browns defense. Now, I'm not 100% convinced this is the top 3 defense in the league yet because, again, of the opponents that they faced this year. Houston, let me actually go back up here and see exactly which games. Houston, Chicago, and Minnesota. I mean, all of those teams don't, have the best offensive line in the league, maybe not even the best offenses in the league. So it maybe has painted a picture of a Browns defense that is top tier, maybe number 1 to number 3 in the league. I'm not quite convinced of that because of their strength of schedule so far. But one thing that we do have to take absolutely serious is the Browns' rushing attack, or their pass rusher. Like, it's absolutely insane. They boast one of the best defenses in the league because of their lethal pass rush in Clowney and Garrett. That's an insane combo, one that every single team in the league is going to struggle with. Okay? Slater should be able to handle either, Clowney or Garrett, depending on who's playing on his side. But Storm Norton versus Garrett or Clowney, that is not great news for the Chargers. Of course, if you guys are a fan of the team, you understand that Brian Bulaga went down early, and Storm Norton's been holding down the fort there at right tackle. Versus some of the best pass rushers in the league, I do expect Storm Norton to struggle quite a bit this week. And he's going to need some help. Storm Norton will need help, because they will likely attack his side very, very aggressively. Now, equally, we have to pay attention to their run defense, which is also very, very good. They limited Dalvin Cook, Montgomery, and I think Mark Ingram to under 50 yards in those 3 games that were, honestly, lesser opponents. But still, Dalvin Cook should speak a lot for what this run defense can do. Under 50 yards for Cook is pretty crazy. And of course, last week, Cook wasn't playing at 100%, so maybe that does, key into that factor a little bit. But still, Cook is one of the best running backs in the league. An interior line featuring the Maliks, we like to call them, Malik Jackson and Malik Dowell, is pretty ruthless. They know what they're doing out there, and in combination with those edge rushers who are also very good against the run, it's going to be a very, very tough day for a guy like Austin Eckler and company on the ground. It really is. Now, luckily for the Chargers, Austin Eckler is a dual threat back, so I think we're going to have to lean on him a lot in that way this week. Maybe throw in a lot of runs. We know what Brandon Staley thinks of establishing the run. It does way more than just put up stats on the ground. It helps you, develop other plays like play action, help in the play in the air game as well. So if you guys didn't catch that interview, definitely check it out from Brandon Staley earlier this week. I think we do need to see some of Austin Eckler on the ground, but we also need to try and keep them guessing as to what Austin Eckler is doing, whether it be on the ground or through the air. I think Eckler's going to be a big part of this week. Additionally, the passing defense is pretty great. Now, Denzel Ward, who we're seeing here on the screen right now, is listed as questionable. Same thing with Troy Hill, who is a great free agent acquisition for them this offseason. But they still do have Greedy Williams and John Johnson out there. This passing D is really, really good. They've limited quarterbacks to around 180 yards per game and a total of 16 points per game for all offenses that they face this season, which is actually pretty crazy, an average of 16 points per game. However, I do think these stats are a little bit misleading, as I stated before, with their strength of schedule. They've only faced one elite quarterback this season in Kansas City, of course, being Patrick Mahomes. They were able to shut down the other guys, Tyrod Taylor, Justin Fields, / Andy Dalton, and Kirk Cousins. I think most people would feel this way, that Justin Herbert is closer in talent-wise to Patrick Mahomes than those other quarterbacks that they faced so far this year. And Patrick Mahomes, I think, went off for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns that game. This could lead to a big game statistically for a Justin Herbert, who the Chargers are going to have to trust a lot this week. And that's actually a great segue into the next segment right here, Justin Herbert. In Herbert, we trust. This is going to be a big game for Justin Herbert in terms of, is he going to help us win this game? Herbert has been a top 5 quarterback this season, in my humble opinion. I think a lot of people are starting to come around to that opinion as well. So the Chargers, I think, will literally need to hand him the keys to the offense this week, because his ability to extend plays and handle pressure is going to be very crucial versus this specific defense. Without a decent run game and an elite pass rush, boasted by the Cleveland Browns, Justin will need to get the ball out very quick and very efficiently. Of course, this is something we saw a lot of last season with, one of the worst, if not the worst, offensive lines in the league. I think Justin Herbert's going to kind of have to, tap into that same mentality for this game. Get the ball out very quick, try and be as efficient as possible, and extend plays with your legs, because the pocket's going to collapse. We have Rashawn Slater out there who should be able to handle business. Corey Linsley's been great. Filer's been pretty good. Abushi's been pretty good. But that right side, weakest link, guys, your line is only as good as its weakest link. That Storm Norton is going to struggle. Storm Norton isn't the worst right tackle in the league by any means, but we're asking a lot out of him this week. So Justin Herbert's going to have to, adapt and try and make up for that. Now, the Chargers knew how to attack the Vegas Raiders last week, so I'm guessing they'll have to do a little bit of the same and take that into account this week for Cleveland, leaning on those tight ends, running backs more through the pass. Of course, we do need to lean a little bit on our receivers as well, but there's got to be a way to exploit this Browns defense. If anybody's going to figure that out, it's Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi, who have done an excellent job so far this season. The Browns are certainly going to be an exceptional defense that they're going to have to plan around too. So again, this could lead to a pretty decent stat line for Justin Herbert. I'm guessing somewhere around 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, very similar to Patrick Mahomes, but we're really going to have to lean in on Justin Herbert this week to make something happen. Those gutsy calls we saw last week versus the Vegas Raiders, going forward on 4th and short and 3rd and long and stuff like that, those fake punts and all the weird stuff that we've seen this season as Chargers fans that honestly are very brave play calling. We might need to see more of that this week in order to keep up with the Browns and trying to exploit their defense. You want to make sure the ball is outside of their hands as much as possible, because game clock's going to be a big part of this game as well. With the Browns running so much, it's not going to leave the Chargers a lot of time to operate on offense. So getting that ball back as much as possible is going to be a very, very big thing. And keeping it in the hands of Justin Herbert is also going to be a very big point of emphasis this week as well. Next thing, the receivers do need to step up a little bit. We're going to need, honestly, I think it really just comes down to we're going to need our best players, our best, skill position players to really step up into this game. And that does include Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, who do need to be more involved this week than they did last week. I think some people are a little bit worried about Keenan Allen. He has seen his share of drops this season. And then Mike Williams was kind of game scripted out last week just because of the way the Raiders were attacking the Chargers wide receivers and throwing a lot of resources into stopping them. Do the Browns do the same thing? They could, but I do think the Chargers are good at adjusting on the fly to that sort of thing in those sorts of situations. So the short pass might be essential this week. Keenan and Eckler could be the heroes of week 5, trying to get that ball out as quick as possible. We're going to need some good route runners out there in order to move the chains, okay? But the Browns DBs, I do have to mention this because this is something that somebody brought up to me last week, and I was like, that's actually a really good point. The Browns DBs are really, really good, but definitely undersized. I think most of them around 5'11". I think Greedy Williams is the only one that's of decent size at 6'2". If he's not on Mike Williams, I would consider that a mismatch. You want to toss it to these big receivers, these big weapons you got out there. In Mike Williams, you can give your share of touches to Donald Parham and Jared Cook, maybe in the red zone. Attack those mismatches as much as possible, because you do have a size advantage when it comes to the Chargers receivers versus the Browns defensive backs. Okay? Next thing up here, the Chargers defense. Bend, but don't break, Chargers defense. It's going to be tough. The Browns are going to make some plays. Nick Chubb is going to make some plays. Kareem Hunt's going to make some plays. It's going to be very tough for the Chargers to stop the run, but they need to not break. I think Staley will need all hands on deck for this game. I think Derwin should play a lot underneath, maybe with some help from the other DBs in stopping the run. I think we're going to see a lot of gutsy play calling out there when it comes to how much you're going to commit to stopping the run this week. which means the passing defense is going to have to be on point as well. The guys that we asked to actually play out deep, they're going to have to be on point this week if we're using so many resources to stop the run. Odell Beckham Jr., I think, is their healthiest wide receiver on the roster right now as far as their talented wide receivers. So we should see maybe of a Donovan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, et cetera, this week. I don't think Jarvis Landry is going to be playing as well. So that passing D really does need to step it up in order to stop an Odell Beckham Jr. so the Chargers can really focus in on slowing down the run and limit as many touchdowns as possible. If we can keep them out of the red zone, I think it's going to force them to pass a lot more. Okay? That's a big thing for this week. I think players like Joey Bosa, Nwosu Linval, and Tranquil are going to be very heavily leaned on to slow down that run. And it could really help the Chargers force Baker Mayfield into a position that he doesn't want to be in, where they really need to lean on him to pass because, again, he has been struggling a lot. In the end, I think the biggest X factor in this game, for me at least, could be Brandon Staley. He's shown a lot of bravery in his play calling, and it may come into play defensively this week. I think the Chargers may be showing some stuff they haven't done this year so far because it's going to take a lot to slow down this running offense. Okay? So my final prediction, a lot of people excited for this one because, again, of course, this is going to be a very tough matchup this week. I do need to emphasize that although this running attack's going to be very lethal, and their defense is really lethal, outside of that, there are areas of weaknesses for the Browns that we've seen exploited, especially versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And due to that and the intelligence of Brandon Staley and the way that he likes to attack offenses and defenses, I think the Chargers do have a really good shot here. Not the highest scoring game in the world, but definitely one the Chargers can handle. So in the end, I'm going to say the Chargers versus Cleveland Browns. Here is my final score prediction. Chargers 27, Browns 20. Okay, I'm hoping the Chargers are able to limit that running attack and start forcing them. If they can start getting ahead as far as points are concerned, it might force Baker Mayfield to pass a little bit more. And I think in the end, the Browns' inexperience with elite quarterbacks this season outside of Patrick Mahomes could break their facade of a top 3 defense in the league. Mahomes was able to carve them up. I think Justin Herbert is more than capable of doing the same. And if the Chargers can figure out how to slow down Chubb and Hunt, it will force an underperforming Baker Mayfield to step up, which the Chargers are more than capable of handling. Baker Mayfield versus the Chargers defense is a hugely different story than Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt versus the Chargers defense. And that's the narrative that I think Brandon Staley is going to try and force into this game via his game plan. What do you guys think in the comments section below? What do you think the final score is going to be of the Chargers versus Browns in this Week 5 matchup? Can the Chargers remain the top team in the AFC West and contend for one of the best teams in the AFC Conference? Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty.